On a crisp October morning in 1970, as the golden leaves of Miami Beach whispered tales of mortality against the windows of his modest apartment, Arthur Ford held a primitive tape recorder in his trembling hands. This device would forever alter humanity's understanding of the mysteries of death. For decades, this man had served as a bridge between two worlds, translating the silent voices of the departed to the grieving hearts of the living. Now he was ready to reveal the deepest secret he held, a secret that religious authorities, scientific skeptics, and even his fellow spiritualists would never accept or comprehend. Arthur Augustus Ford, born under the boundless Kentucky sky in 1896, held in his blue eyes the melancholy of one who had seen too much. His childhood was marked by visions others called nightmares, whispers of voices no one else could hear, and a constant feeling that invisible layers of reality pulsed around him like waves on a frequency only his soul could tune into. As a young man, he tried to ignore this unsettling gift, seeking refuge in normalcy through theological studies and Baptist ministry. But the spiritual world called to him with an insistence that could not be silenced, and gradually he surrendered to his destiny as a medium, dedicating his life to unveiling the veils separating the living from the dead. For half a century, Ford had conducted thousands of seances, consoled inconsolable widows, reunited grieving parents with children they thought lost forever, and served as a messenger between dimensions that coexist in a delicate cosmic interweaving. His fame grew when he delivered precise and detailed messages from Harry Houdini to his wife Bess, fulfilling the great magician's promise to communicate after death if it were possible. This historical event, a live radio broadcast in 1928, established Ford as one of the most respected and investigated mediums of his time, undergoing rigorous scientific tests that confirmed the authenticity of his paranormal gifts. But now, at 74, his body frail yet his mind sharpened by the nearness of his own transition, Ford felt the time had come to share truths that transcended any seance he had ever conducted. The revelations he was about to record were not merely communications from spirits. They were personal experiences lived by him during decades of involuntary astral travel, moments when his consciousness detached from his physical body and navigated the subtle planes of existence, witnessing with his own spiritual eyes the destinies of souls after leaving Earth. The recording began with Ford's measured voice, carrying a serenity only those intimately familiar with the mysteries of death possess. He spoke of his first out-of-body experiences, which occurred spontaneously during the most intense seances, when his consciousness rose above his physical form and he found himself floating in an intermediary region between the material world and the higher spiritual realms. On these unplanned journeys, Ford discovered that death was not an end, but a transformation as natural as a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, and that loved ones we leave behind do not vanish into nothingness, but continue to exist in parallel dimensions, retaining their individuality, memories, and above all their love for those left on Earth. During these out-of-body experiences, Ford had witnessed the transition process of newly deceased souls, observing how they were greeted by family and friends who had passed before in a reunion filled with light, recognition, and indescribable joy. He described how he saw spirits gradually materialize as people neared death, preparing the environment to receive that soul on its new journey. These luminous beings were not distant strangers, but the beloved faces we thought we had lost forever. Parents, grandparents, spouses, children, and friends patiently waiting on the other side of the veil, ready to guide and comfort those about to make the same crossing. These manifestations, which the living often interpreted as coincidences or imagination, were actually deliberate attempts at communication, objects inexplicably moving, familiar scents appearing out of nowhere, vivid dreams carrying messages, or that comforting feeling of presence that sometimes surrounds us in moments of greatest loneliness or need. Ford explained that souls newly arrived in the spiritual world went through a period of adaptation and healing, assisted by specialized guides who had already completed their own evolutionary journeys. In these recovery environments, which he described as infinite gardens bathed in a gentle, loving light, the emotional wounds and traumas of the last incarnation were gradually healed through a process combining understanding, forgiveness, and unconditional love. It was there that many souls reunited with relatives and friends, not only from the last life, but from all previous existences, recognizing each other instantly through bonds that transcended the limitations of time and physical form. One of Ford's most touching revelations concerned children who die prematurely. In his astral travels, he had witnessed how these little souls were welcomed by spiritual family members in environments specially created for their evolutionary continuation, where they could grow and develop in wisdom and love, always maintaining a special connection with their earthly parents, who continued to accompany them spiritually. These children didn't remain stagnant at the age at which they departed, but continued to expand their consciousness at an accelerated rate, often becoming protective guides for their own parents, sending inspiration, courage, and comfort during the most difficult times. As his narrative deepened, Ford began to reveal even more extraordinary aspects of his experiences. He had discovered that true love creates eternal bridges between souls, and that genuine bonds formed during earthly life not only survive death, but become even more intense and pure when freed from the limitations and conflicts of physical existence. Couples who deeply loved each other remained united on the spiritual planes, working together on projects to help other souls and preparing future incarnations where they could reunite again. Parents and children maintained connections that transcended generations, forming spiritual family groups that supported each other through multiple existences. Ford also described witnessing the work of evolved souls who dedicated themselves specifically to assisting people going through times of great suffering on Earth. These luminous beings, whom he identified as former loved ones who had reached higher levels of spiritual development, worked tirelessly to send inspiration, strength, and hope to those who needed it most. Often, the sudden ideas that arise in our minds during crises, the unexpected solutions to seemingly unsolvable problems, or that sudden courage that allows us to overcome impossible obstacles, were in fact spiritual gifts sent by these invisible guardians who continued to love and protect us from the other side of life. But it was in addressing his own near-death experiences that Ford revealed the deepest secrets he had kept for decades. During a severe pneumonia in 1955, when doctors had already given up hope of saving him, his consciousness completely detached from his body, and he was guided by a being of light whom he immediately recognized as his paternal grandfather, deceased. When Ford was still a child, together they traversed increasingly luminous and harmonious dimensions, arriving at a place Ford described as a crystal city where the music of the spheres resonated eternally, creating symphonies of indescribable beauty that nourished souls with vibrations of pure love. In this celestial region, Ford was introduced to a council of wise beings who showed him the greater purpose of his mission on Earth. He saw how each mediumistic session he had conducted was part of a larger cosmic plan to awaken humanity to the reality of the continuity of life, preparing people for the great transition that every soul must face. These beings explained that Ford had chosen, even before birth, to serve as a bridge between worlds, and that his painful experiences and questioning had been necessary to develop the sensitivity and compassion needed to fulfill this sacred mission. During this transcendental experience, Ford also received visions of humanity's future and the crucial role that mediumistic communication would play in the spiritual evolution of the human race. He saw how, gradually, more people would develop natural psychic abilities, allowing for more direct and frequent communication between the physical and spiritual planes. This progressive opening of the veils between worlds would be accompanied by a transformation of humanity's own understanding of death, which would cease to be seen as a terrifying end to be recognized as a natural graduation to higher levels of existence. When Ford finally returned to his physical body, he carried with him not only the absolute certainty of the continuity of life, but also specific instructions on how to prepare humanity to accept these truths without fear or superstition. For the next 15 years, he worked discreetly to fulfill this mission, carefully selecting the people who would receive deeper revelations and gradually planting seeds of understanding that would blossom in future generations. But there was an even more extraordinary aspect of his experiences that Ford had kept in absolute secrecy until that final recording. During his deepest astral travels, he had discovered that souls not only survive individual death, but that there is a universal collective consciousness of which all are a part, an infinite network of love and wisdom that connects all beings who have ever existed or will exist. In this supreme dimension, the illusory separations between self and other completely dissolved, revealing that each soul is simultaneously unique and part of an indivisible cosmic unity. Ford described how, in this state of expanded consciousness, he could feel the love of all loved ones who had already departed, not as separate entities, but as facets of a single eternal love that permeated all of existence. It was as if every person we love, and who preceded us on the journey to the beyond, became a permanent part of our own essence, continuing to nourish, guide, and protect us through this fundamental connection that no death can break. These revelations brought forward a revolutionary understanding of the nature of grief and longing. He realized that the pain of physical separation, while real and necessary for the process of emotional growth, is based on a fundamental illusion, the belief that death interrupts love. Ford actually discovered that true love not only survives physical transition but becomes purer, more constant and more accessible when freed from the limitations and conflicts of the physical body. Loved ones who pass on don't leave us. They become part of our own inner light, whispering guidance through intuition, sending comfort through subtle signs and paving the way for our own future transition. As Ford aged and felt his own transition approaching, these truths became increasingly tangible in his daily experience. He began to perceive the presence of deceased family members with growing clarity, not just during seances, but in everyday moments of quietude and reflection. His mother, deceased for over 2 decades, became a constant and comforting presence, offering guidance through sudden intuitions and profoundly meaningful dreams. Dear friends who had passed sent signs of their nearness through synchronicities impossible to ignore, chance encounters resulting in needed information, books falling open to the exact page containing the answer to his questions, or songs playing at the precise moment he most needed to hear their messages. But perhaps the most striking revelation Ford shared in that secret recording concerned the process of spiritual preparation that occurs in the months or years preceding physical death. Through his mediumship experiences and astral travels, he had observed how souls nearing transition begin to receive increasingly frequent spiritual visits from deceased loved ones, gradually preparing their consciousness to accept the naturalness of the change to come. These visits might manifest through vivid dreams laden with messages of love and encouragement, feelings of presence bringing inexplicable peace, or even visual appearances for those whose psychic sensitivity naturally sharpens as they approach transition. Ford explained that this process of spiritual preparation isn't random, but carefully orchestrated by loving guides who intimately know each soul and know exactly how to offer the comfort and encouragement needed for the transition to occur with serenity and confidence. Often, people near death report conversations with deceased family members that others can't see, experiences frequently interpreted as delusions or mental confusion, but which Ford knew were real and profoundly meaningful encounters between souls preparing to reunite. During these spiritual preparations, Ford had witnessed how people's own psychic abilities naturally amplify, allowing them to perceive dimensions of reality that remained hidden for most of their lives. This expansion of consciousness serves as a gentle bridge between the embodied and disembodied state, helping the soul gradually accustom itself to the subtler forms of perception and communication that characterize spiritual existence. One of the most touching aspects of Ford's revelations concerned the role that pets play in spiritual continuity. During his astral travels, he had repeatedly encountered beloved dogs, cats, and other animals faithfully awaiting their human companions in the spiritual planes. These beings, whose capacity for unconditional love often surpasses that of humans themselves, maintain eternal bonds with those they loved on earth and serve as guides and companions in the early stages of post-death adjustment, offering the same loyalty and affection they demonstrated during physical life. Ford described spiritually created environments designed to reunite people with their beloved animals. places of unimaginable natural beauty where telepathic communication allows complete mutual understanding and where shared love creates bonds, even deeper than those that existed during earthly life. These reunions, charged with pure joy and immediate recognition, demonstrate that no genuine form of love is ever wasted or lost in the cosmos. As his narrative approached its climax, Ford began to share the most extraordinary experience of his entire life, a direct encounter with what he could only describe as the supreme source of all existence. During a particularly profound out-of-body experience, occurring just a few months before the recording, he had been guided through progressively more luminous and harmonious dimensions until reaching a state of consciousness where all separations completely dissolved. In that transcendental moment, Ford realized that every soul that ever lived, including all the loved ones we think we've lost, exists eternally within this universal consciousness, simultaneously maintaining its unique individuality and its fundamental unity with the whole. It was a revelation that completely transformed his understanding of the nature of death, separation, and love. He saw that when someone dies, they are actually simply returning more consciously to this eternal union that was never truly interrupted, and that our longing and love for those who have passed are echoes of this fundamental connection that remains intact through all changes and transformations. In this supreme experience, Ford also understood that the ultimate purpose of all individual existences is to develop the capacity to love unconditionally, and that every significant relationship we establish during our earthly lives contributes to this gradual expansion of our capacity to love. Loved ones we lose don't disappear, but become a permanent part of our own expanded capacity to love, teaching us through longing to more deeply cherish the bonds we still hold and preparing us to love even more completely in future experiences. When Ford finally returned from this transformative experience, he carried with him an absolute certainty that transcended any form of doubt or intellectual questioning. He knew with every fiber of his being that death is merely an illusion created by the limitation of our physical perception, and that all the beings we love continue to exist in a dimension of reality more true and permanent than the material world we know through our senses. This certainty brought Ford a profound peace that radiated from his being like soft light, touching the lives of all who came into contact with him during his final months. Those who knew him during this period often commented on the extraordinary serenity he exuded, a quality of presence that seemed to carry echoes of the celestial realms he'd explored and offered instant comfort to any grieving heart. In the final words of his secret recording, Ford offered a message of hope that summarized decades of extraordinary experiences and transformative revelations. He spoke of how understanding the eternal continuity of life doesn't eliminate the natural pain of grief, but transforms it into a sacred form of love that honors both those who have departed and those who continue the earthly journey. Longing, Ford explained, is the price we pay for the privilege of having genuinely loved, and every tear shed for the physical absence of a loved one is actually an offering of gratitude for the gift of having shared love with that special soul. Ford concluded his extraordinary revelation with a reflection on the fundamental role each person plays in the grand cosmic project of spiritual evolution. Every life, no matter how brief or seemingly simple, contributes uniquely and irreplaceably to the growth of universal consciousness. Every act of love, every moment of compassion, every gesture of kindness creates waves of light that ripple through all dimensions of existence, nourishing and uplifting countless other souls in both the physical and spiritual planes. Death, therefore, is not an end but a transformation that allows the soul to contribute in even deeper and more encompassing ways to this divine project of universal love. Loved ones who have preceded us on the journey to the beyond continue to work with us, just in different and often more effective ways, guiding our spiritual evolution through subtle inspirations, protecting us through unseen interventions, and preparing the celestial realms, where we will one day reunite in a joy that will infinitely surpass any happiness we knew during our earthly existence. When Arthur Ford finished his recording on that golden October morning, he knew he had shared secrets that could transform humanity's understanding of existence's deepest mysteries. Months later, when his own transition came peacefully on, A quiet January night in 1971. Those present reported an indescribable expression of joy that lit his face in his final moments, as if he had glimpsed beloved faces waiting to receive him on the other side. The recording he left remained hidden for decades, awaiting the right moment to be revealed to a humanity finally ready to accept its transformative truths about the eternal destiny of souls and the infinite continuity of love that unites all beings across time and space.